In the 1950s, George Reeves embodied the Man of Steel in Superman's first television adaptation, from its gritty black and white beginnings to the kid-friendly color years. To this day, an entire generation reveres George as their Superman, while for others, the show remains an overlooked, underrated chapter in the character's history. On this podcast, we bring everyone together as we break down each episode of Adventures of Superman, examining it within the context of the series itself, as well as the larger Superman mythology. Welcome to another exciting episode in the Adventures of Superman. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Season 5, Episode 13, Whatever Goes Up, is returning guest, Rich Roney. Season finale time.
Season finale. It's been a while.
Yeah, we've made it to the end of, of Season 5 at last.
It's a relief, but it's been a while.
Yeah, and here we are yet again with a member of the Daily Planet crew exploring a hidden, previously unknown interest in chemistry and performing experiments for the government, just like we had in Peril by Sea.
This must be Jimmy's, hey, I want equal time, right? Perry got to be the intense scientist in Peril by Sea. I want equal time. But this was also super reminiscent of Showcase number 4 with Barry Allen in some ways.
Yeah, I know that's true with the wall of chemicals. All right. Amateur chemist Professor Olsen invents an anti-gravity solution, but can't remember the formula. This aired on May 31st, 1957, written by Wilton Schiller, directed by Harry Gerstad, and our guest cast of 2, Tris Coffin as Major Osborne and Milton Fromm as Frank Gannis. What can we say about this one? Overall thoughts?
The bottom line thought is this was another attempt at comedy that fell flat. There were so many lines in here that I thought, had the delivery been different, would have been very funny. And we'll get to them. But there was one that made me laugh, but they were also wooden-faced when they delivered it. I mean, they missed so many. The writing was comedic. The delivery was just very, very serious.
Yeah, I mean, where do I start? So, I mean, largely the same issue with this that I had with Peril by Sea. Although here, unlike that Perry episode where it turns out he's had this secret chemistry expertise all along and he's studying these ancient scientific texts and all of that.
Scrolls. Here,
it seems the setup is that Jimmy has gotten basically a child's chemistry set and is dabbling. So I think from the jump, it's a little bit easier to swallow. But then when we get to the point of the government entrusting these experiments to him, it's once again absurd. It's like, surely there are better people. We were talking off mic. I mean, this very much felt like an episode tailor-made for Pepperwinkle. And in fact, we saw kind of a version of this with Topsy-Turvy a while back. So I don't know if this was an intention, like they intended this to be a Pepperwinkle episode and it didn't happen for whatever reason, or if it was always meant to be Jimmy. As someone who doesn't love Pepperwinkle, I don't mind so much that it ended up being Jimmy driving this episode instead of him, but it does beg the question because this really felt like a Pepperwinkle thing.
Oh, I very much agree. And I was wondering, like, did something come up at the last minute? And the actor who played Pepperwinkle was not available. Was he sick? Had another commitment? But this seemed so reminiscent of Topsy-Turvy, or even that one with the phone lines, an outlandish. Jimmy did deliver well if he had to pick up the pieces, but this was like, hey, I want equal time compared with Perry and Peril by Sea.
Yeah. So are you saying, like, you think Jack Larson was like, I want an episode where I'm doing
Oh,
science?
No, I'm being facetious. I'm being facetious. I'm being facetious.
When you said it the second time, then I'm like, wait a minute.
No,
Where's it going with
I'm
this?
being...
I understand. Yeah. There were, and we'll get to it, there are a couple of funny lines. Like there are a couple of exchanges, especially between Perry and the Major, where I'm like, oh, okay. And when Jimmy entered, when the three of them are together.
One scene with the Major and Jimmy, we'll get to it, but I'll let you go through the sequence.
But overall, this just felt like a very small episode. I mean, we're in Perry's office and Jimmy's lab, and that's it. And only a couple of guest actors. I mean, this just felt like a very small episode. and it just, there was just an energy that was not there for me at least. So, all right, we'll get into our play-by-play here, and more will come up as we move along here. As we open here, Jimmy is mixing chemicals in his lab and accidentally douses the pants of a passerby outside his window. The man barges in and blames Jimmy for ruining his pants. Now, unless I misheard, did this man say his pants cost $60?
Yes, we heard that a couple of times. 60.
Yeah.
We heard that a couple
in
of
1957
times.
or 56 when they filmed
That's
this.
like a full week's salary.
Yeah. It's not beyond the realm of possibility, but they're awfully, I was floored. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we had Jimmy at the curio shop trying to buy Superman mementos, and a few dollars was like a staggering amount. So I don't know, $60 for a pair of pants.
That's like a week's salary.
Yeah. I mean, this guy ends up being the villain of the piece, and if this guy's rolling around in $60 pants, why is he trying to steal this formula? He's probably fine.
And look at what we went through with Frank Smullins. I mean, this is his salary was only 3/4 of what those pants cost.
Yeah, these are some expensive pants. But anyway, Superman intervenes and scares the guy off. Jimmy explains that he's veered beyond the chemicals included in his chemistry set. Noticing what Jimmy has been using to make a rubber ball, Superman grabs it just before it explodes. And you had mentioned this in an earlier episode, but here, as we've seen before, right, we have Superman smothering the blast.
Right. And containing it, protecting the bystanders with his own invulnerable body.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I loved about this episode, and we discussed this weeks ago, George Reeves was injured in a car accident sometime prior just to filming season 5. But he did a great job on that swing bar going through. I mean, that was like a gymnastic swing bar, how he got through that window. I was impressed with his timing, his ability to land. George Reeves did a great job on that.
Question for you. As far as we know, Jimmy lives with his mother in an apartment. Where do you think he is? This basement lab? Is this just like a common area in the basement of his building that he was allowed to use? Do he and his mom live in like a brownstone now or something? And they have this basement area? Like where do we think he is?
I assumed. Boy, you're taking this to a level that I was unprepared for. I assumed.
We got to talk about something at these episodes.
If they lived in an apartment, I forgot about that. But now that I think of some other episodes, there was a reference to the apartment. But I just assumed this was the house his mother owned, and this was the basement.
We'll go with it. At the planet, Jimmy displays his anti-gravity solution for the audience, then Perry, and finally Major Osborne of the U.S. military, who Perry calls in. So I've put a lot together in that one sentence, but I mean, that's basically what we get. We have this extended sequence of the solution being displayed. Like I said, for us, for Perry, for Osborne, we see him with the little, dousing a little drop of it onto the little statue and the pen and the bottle itself.
Yeah, we see it displayed. We see at least 3 occurrences of this bottle of an anti-gravity liquid, like you said, on the paperweight or the bookend, on the Major's pen, and then the bottle just leaves by itself and they all miss it.
Yeah, and Superman grabs it. Yeah. And especially with Perry and the Major, the same beats play out, where at first they don't believe it. They think it's a joke. Then they realize it's true. We do get, like we were alluding to earlier, I think some funny exchanges here where the Major, right, is asking about Professor Olsen. And then there's a really funny bit where Perry, activates the intercom and he's like, send in Olsen.
Yes. Yes.
So that was good. And then as we kind of wind down the sequence here, despite the very temporary nature of the formula, it's decided that the young Olsen will continue to work on it at his lab at his full planet salary, of course. Of course. Yeah. So that was a funny bit as well. What else? Yeah. Did anything else stand out from that scene? No. Okay.
No.
But yeah, the other thing that did actually make me laugh is when I guess the Major is concerned about Jimmy's young age.
Oh, I thought that was later, but I know where that line cracked me up.
About Einstein?
Yes. I mean, because the Major is quizzical, or he's puzzled by this young age. And Jimmy goes, well, what do you mean? Einstein discovered his theory of relativity when he was 12. And the Major deadpans, no, he was 26.
Yeah.
He did when he was 12. He was 26. but that could have had more impact if it were played for humor. But I'm wondering, did the powers that be say, look, we don't want humor in this. This is not Abbott and Costello meet the Wolfman. Deliver it straight. But it was a funny line.
Yeah, I think there's an energy and a patter to these lines. There's a back and forth that if you hit them right, it just kind of elevates it. And I don't know that we really had that here, but there was some potential. It's also always striking to me, especially given this time period. It's like there's this new invention. You can make things fly. It's like, of course, the first thing you would have to do is notify the government.
Yeah.
So it's just always interesting. At his lab, Jimmy confides in Lois that he doesn't know what went into the original formula, as he was originally trying to make a cake. The man from earlier returns, first claims to work for the government, then quickly pulls a gun and reveals himself to be a thief.
Now, just before this, when they return back to Jimmy's cellar laboratory, they're certainly not worried about toxic fumes.
No, I know. Lois, thankfully, has enough sense to open the window.
A window. But, I mean, all these fumes and smoke is coming right in Jimmy's face. You can hardly see him. And then Lois did have the presence of mind to go, Jimmy, it's awful in here. Open the window and let's air it out. But, I mean, talk about exposure to cancerous or radioactive or things that could have really messed up your lungs. I was just aghast at that.
I know. You would have at least thought that the chemistry set would have included instructions, like make sure you have proper airflow.
Well, but Jimmy, you know what? I got these chemicals at the chemical store or the chemistry store myself.
Yeah. Well, in any event, Superman arrives and scares the guy off again, but has to let him go in order to retrieve the floating bottle of the solution that Jimmy had handed over. There's also a bit, too, where there's a scuffle with Jimmy and Lois and the guy, and the solution gets on the gun.
Yeah.
Right, and the gun is floating. And I think even before that, the bench is floating.
Oh, and it hits the guy and knocks the gun out of his hand.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. In Perry's office, Jimmy is ready to quit and let the government take over. But Perry and the Major convince him to keep at it. Now I'm saying to myself, at this point, especially if you're Major Osborn, yeah, maybe the government scientists should take over this operation. It's like, it's one thing if Jimmy had actually been a scientist, had demonstrated any actual know-how or at least enthusiasm. But now on top of his other deficiencies, he's like, I don't want to do this. And they're like, no, you have to.
Right. And Lois, I think, was more practical. Hey, Jimmy, let's line up all your chemicals in the same positions they were in earlier. And let's see if we can't kind of repeat the conditions that led to this. So Lois was very pragmatic. But Jimmy, there were no notes. I mean, it was all completely random.
My love of the TV series Smallville is well documented, and there's one rewatch podcast that's always at the top of my queue. Zach Moore's Always Hold On to Smallville, which continues with more great Smallville and Superman talk now that their series rewatch has concluded. Listen wherever you get podcasts. If you have children and are looking for a family-friendly store, look no further than Aw Yeah Comics. Visit one of their 3 locations, Harrison, New York, Muncie, Indiana, or Skokie, Illinois, and check out awyeahcomics.com for more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Aw yeah! Fat Moose Comics, established in 1982, is New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store. Moose has that rare, old-school comic shop feel and camaraderie, yet also remains a welcoming space for new fans. Visit them in Whippany or reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. Ever wonder what would happen if a person who knew barely anything about comics decided to absorb hundreds of Superman stories? Robbo is that kind of person, and that's exactly what he's doing on a new show called This Podcast Will Never Die. Listen and subscribe today. Single Bound is a new podcast hosted by married couple Amy and Logan as they review single issues of comics. And if the title makes you think of Superman, you're not alone, as the Man of Steel is a regular topic of discussion. Listen and subscribe to Single Bound on Spotify and YouTube. Yeah, I don't mean to keep harping on this, but the government angle is just kind of baffling. And it's almost one of those things, if they hadn't brought in the government yet, if it had just been like, Jimmy, you got to figure this out and then give it to the government. And then he's working on it on his own. But it's just the idea that the government would be aware of this and sanction him working on this on his own. I mean, eventually we get to the point where they surround the building with troops we never see. But
we never see. But then your point's eminently good. The major really didn't add anything that could not have otherwise occurred, just Perry and Jimmy.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I mean, I think we're getting to this. Or did we already pass it? I forget. But there is a point where, oh yeah, this came a little bit earlier. I skipped over this, but it's okay. We mentioned Perry here. So this was the big thing I was waiting for in this episode, is for Perry, the scientist.
Oh, good point. I didn't think of that, and I salute you. Yeah, why didn't Perry, with all his brilliance and his scientific knowledge, why didn't he start going, well, what chemicals did you use? Why didn't he go to the basement and see, that would have been a nice connection point.
I know that. And so, so that's the thing. I know I always have complaints about these episodes, but I'm not asking for much, but it's like you did a whole episode on Perry being a chemist, extracting uranium from seawater. So here's an opportunity. And then you could pair the two of them up instead of having Lois in the lab with him. It's like, wouldn't you want Perry and Jimmy in that lab together for that odd couple routine?
Oh, but you couldn't do that because Perry doesn't drink coffee and Lois did.
Don't get me started on that. But so, yeah, I don't know. So there's that. In fairness, there is that moment in the earlier scene with Perry, Jimmy, and the Major where Perry does put forth a theory about opposing forces.
Oh, no, don't get me started on that. It is so absolutely bonkers. Well, everyone knows gravity's a magnetic force. No, absolutely not. I mean, but Perry was so emphatic. But look, gravity has to do with density and mass, and magnetism has to do with electricity. But he, if you were like some 6-year-old child, I could see myself going into third grade science class. Everybody knows gravity is a result of magnetism.
Fair. But the soundness of the science or lack thereof aside, just the fact that he offered a theory, and in the world of the show, it was accurate, even though, right? But within that context, it's like, I appreciated that. At least it was some acknowledgement that, he's got some sort of scientific background, but it's just like, yeah, I don't know. If ever there was a point to reference that otherwise totally random trait of the character, I felt like this would have been it. Anyway, speaking of coffee, back at the lab, Jimmy continues to struggle, but has mastered the chemistry of coffee. Gannis returns once more, making it in right before unseen troops surround the lab to protect the experiment. When Gannis assumes the coffee is more anti-gravity solution, Lois goes along with it, and Jimmy adds it to the container of real solution. Now, I liked Lois's quick thinking in that moment of like, sure, she plays it off like, you figured it out.
You got us.
And then I do love Jimmy hands
what?
Well, that, but then when Jimmy does ultimately hand it over and he's like, do you want cream and sugar with that? And the guy's like, what? He goes, nothing. That was
before
funny.
that, there was, I don't know if it was, I think it was Gannis. Gannis was saying something, and I forget what it was. And Jimmy goes, I wish I knew how I did this too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So that was funny. Meanwhile, back at the planet, of course, we're either the planet or the lab. So at the planet, Major Osborne reveals to Clark and Perry how the government scientists determined that water makes the solution explode. So I am glad that there are at least some government scientists who are checking this out. I don't know why they're not more involved, but at least they figured this out. Superman arrives at the lab and neutralizes Gannis. When he explains the problem with the solution and realizes that coffee has been mixed with it, he tosses the container to Gannis, who survives the explosion, his clothes tattered in the aftermath.
But absent the destruction of his suit, which we don't know how much it cost.
Oh, God.
Right? He's unscathed. Right? And that was the comedic moment. I mean, this was straight out of I Dream a Genie or some silly thing.
Cartoon. I mean, like that. Yeah. That's why I have two problems here.
What? Your third problem is that Wile E. Coyote didn't show up?
Yeah. The cartoonish nature of it aside. So number one, it's like, why wouldn't the explosion hurt him? Why would it only mess up his clothes? But beyond that, it's like, why on earth would Superman toss it to him as opposed to throw it out the window?
What was the episode we saw? Oh, with Frank Smullins when he threw, right? Why? I agree. Or why didn't he muffle it with his body like he did earlier, early in the same episode?
The thing is, it's like, yes, obviously the explosion ends up being relatively harmless, but there's nothing, this is the problem. There's nothing to indicate to us that Superman knows what the effect of the blast is going to be. Like, we just know it's going to explode.
That's a good point.
And he throws it. Now, if Major Osborn had said, the scientist said it's going to explode, it's a harmless explosion, but it'll cause a lot of smoke. I don't know, something like that. And then it's like, okay, Superman wants to teach this guy a lesson. But absent that, it's like, why would you it feels like he's taking a wild risk.
That's a great point. Anthony, I didn't think about that. And it would have been more, you said it eloquently. Had the Major, hey, here's what we learned when the explosion went off, you might be hard of hearing for a couple of days, or
if they had just said, like, organic material isn't affected, right? But inorganic material, like, so, all right, so he knows, all right, the clothes will be tattered, but the guy will be fine. I know, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Here's the thing, especially for a show and an era of the show where it was all about, we can't be too violent, we can't scare the kids, we can't put bad ideas in the kids' heads.
You know what? You get something dangerous, throw it at somebody you don't like. Who cares what happens?
Yeah, like that's what's baffling to me. It's like Superman can't throw a punch, but he can throw an exploding solution at somebody. How is that okay?
Yeah, and if I may, what are you going to do if some kids are like down in their basement playing with Clorox or bleach or some other stuff, and they throw it at one another, right? I mean, all the stuff we saw, say, in Panic in the Sky, only Superman has the powers. Here, there's none of this like educational information to children.
Anything else before we give our ratings?
I will say, for me, four quick comments to punch it all up before I give my rating. Again, like I said before, this was another attempt at comedy that was a dud. It could have been better if they just worked a little bit more on the timing or the delivery. So that was a missed opportunity because some of the lines were very funny. I thought George Reeves did a great athletic job with the swing bar. That was something we really hadn't seen in any other episodes. Usually he's going off the board. I kind of thought it was short shrift. We only had 2 sets that they bounced back and forth on. And then the last thing is their embracing of toxic fumes. I thought, whoa, that's not a good move.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so how many are you giving this one? 0.5 again?
I was wrestling between 0.5 and 1, and I'm going with 0.5.
I know. Could I even give this a 1?
I mean, to me, I'll say one last thing. What led me to conclude 0.5, there were so many plot holes, undelivered comedy. Just the fact that they didn't have sets or other characters. Now I'm more convinced 0.5.
All right, I'm going to go with 0.5 also because, I mean, thinking about it, it's not like I've been gun shy about giving a 1 or a 2 to other color episodes. And I really do look at these season 5 episodes as the weakest of the color episodes. So it's like, if I've given a solid 1 even to a season 3 or 4 episode, it's like, this doesn't even rise to that. I'm going to go 0.5 here.
And I want to pick your brain because you've had more extensive viewing. I think now you've done every single episode through the end of season 5, and you're ahead on a few for season 6. But 2 questions I have for you. Why do you think this whole season was so lackluster? And I guess my other question is my own impression. And just to speak with you, I watched some other episodes of season 5. In my opinion, Money to Burn is probably the best episode of the 13. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, now that we're at the end, everyone's heard all of our discussions. As people heard, I mean, Money to Burn was far and away my favorite of the season, Perry-centric. And that's one that I felt really held up against the stronger color season episodes. So yeah, that was far and away my favorite, followed immediately by far and away my least favorite of the season and the series, which was Close Shave. I know for a lot of people, Mr. Zero falls into that category. I was no great fan of Mr. Zero, but at least I felt that offered a little bit more in terms of the kindness and compassion that you saw Clark and Superman display to Mr. Zero. So overall, I mean, as far as why, I mean, we talked about this in our first episode. We know that they were more limited in terms of the action because of the car accident George Reeves had. We had one new writer, but I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, even factoring in both of those items, I still don't know that explains or excuses how lackluster these episodes were. And even always recognizing the context of sanitizing it for the young audience. Like, I still just think, and I don't mean to belabor this point, but I continue to cite back to Around the World with Superman at the end of season 2. And it's like, because I think that's a perfect example of, yes, it was a black and white episode, but it was not a dark, grim, and gritty episode, right? Like the season 1 installments. It was a very heartwarming story about helping this young blind girl. And yes, we do get the flight around the world in terms of the spectacle. But even if you cut that out, it's still such a strong, heartwarming episode that I think is appropriate, more than appropriate for all ages. My point is, it's like you can do those kinds of stories better. So it's like, even factoring in, we can't have as much action, we can't have as much violence. Well, it's like, there are still good stories that you can tell. And why they didn't achieve that, especially in this season, it's like, I don't know if it was just the grind of pumping these out that was wearing on everybody. Like, I don't know.
But to your point, and I'm commending you, and I salute you, they could have written the scripts well in advance of the filming and punched them up and made them more qualitatively, injected stuff to make it a tighter, better story. The scripts could have been done a year in advance. They neglected that. The shooting schedule may have been restrictive. One thing I meant to bring this up. How Gannis is the only bad guy in there, but there's one point in this story where Clark's in there and goes, "Perry, the whole underworld knows about what's going on with this." Well, how did they learn about it? Did Gannis go, "I better get this before my competitors do"?
Yeah, good question. Good question. I don't know, because clearly they haven't publicized this yet. Like, Lois is there to take notes for the eventual story once they're allowed to release it. Yeah, I don't know. But I'm glad to be finished with season 5. I'll say that much. All right, so people are not going to wait long for season 6. Our coverage is going to kick off in just 1 month in early June. And Rich, you're going to be here for the first 4 episodes of season 6, starting with The Last Night.
Thank you. And Anthony, I'm trying to process this. I definitely think for seasons 4 and 5, you gave me the privilege of the first episode and the last episode of each of those. So that's for 4 and 5. I don't remember.
You've done all the premieres and finales for the color era and Will. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
You got it, man. Of course. All right. Well, I look forward to season 6. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, audience. Make sure you join us for the start of our season 6 coverage. We'll be back before you know it. And until then, remember, only Superman can do super things. This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. Another way to support the show and receive exclusive content, including the spin-off podcast Beyond Metropolis, is by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please subscribe, rate, and review today via your podcast platform of choice, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. Flat Squirrel Podcasts is also home to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, a long-running weekly series mining Superman's vast mythology across time and media. Subscribe today. Another exciting episode is a Flat Squirrel production. Key art by Greg Schiegel and theme music by Dan Pritchard.